They don't raise their voice. They don't fight to be understood. They simply go quiet. And that silence speaks volumes. You might think they're weak, that they've surrendered the argument. But here's the truth. They've just outgrown the need to wrestle for recognition. These are the ones who see everything, feel everything, and remember everything, yet choose peace over pride. They don't argue, because they've realized that silence often reveals what words try to hide. But don't mistake their calm for forgetfulness. Their mind is a diary that never loses a page. They remember every tone, every lie, every truth that trembled beneath your words. Today, we step into their quiet world to understand the hidden strength, the deep restraint, and the haunting clarity of people who never argue, but always remember. Not everyone who stays silent has nothing to say. Some people could shatter your argument with a single sentence, but they choose not to, because for them, peace is not just a mood, it's a principle. They've learned that winning an argument can cost too much. It can drain your spirit, twist your words, and turn understanding into warfare. So they stay quiet, not because they're weak, but because they know the price of pride. You see, they've watched people argue for validation, for ego, for the desperate need to be right, and they've realized something profound. Being right doesn't always bring peace, but being calm always does. When conflict rises, they don't meet it with fire. They let silence do what anger cannot. Disarm. It's not that they don't feel the sting of misunderstanding. They do. They feel it so deeply that they'd rather bear it quietly than throw words that will only echo regret later. Their peace is not passive, it's powerful. It's the kind that comes from knowing that truth does not need defending. It just needs time. So they hold their tongue, not out of fear, but out of faith. Faith that silence will reveal what shouting never could. And when the storm passes, they'll still be there, calm, composed, remembering everything. Because memory is their quiet form of justice. They don't seek revenge in words. They let time do the talking. In a world that glorifies being loud, they remain the whisper that endures. Because real strength isn't in proving your point. It's in knowing you don't have to. For them, silence is not a void, it's a vantage point. While others rush to reply, they observe. They study faces, tones, pauses between words. Because they know that truth hides in the spaces where speech hesitates. They don't argue because they've mastered the art of listening. Not the kind of listening that waits to respond, but the kind that understands. When someone speaks in anger, they don't just hear the words, they hear the wound behind the words. When someone lies, they don't confront. They simply remember how the eyes shifted, how the voice trembled, how the truth twisted quietly in the air. You see, listening gives them power, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that sees. Because to listen deeply is to know deeply. And to know deeply is to no longer need to argue. They understand that people reveal themselves without realizing it. Every story told in haste, every defensive tone, every contradiction becomes a thread they quietly collect. They weave these moments into patterns that expose what words were trying to conceal. So they stay quiet, not out of submission, but observation. Their silence is strategic. It's the space where understanding grows while others burn energy trying to be heard. When the dust settles, they'll know exactly what happened, who meant what, and which truths were worth holding on to. Because the listener always leaves with more than the talker. And while others forget what they said in the heat of the moment, these quiet souls remember every detail, not to hold grudges, but to hold wisdom. Their memory becomes their armor. It protects them from manipulation, from lies dressed as love, from promises made in convenience. They may not say much, but their silence records everything. And in a world obsessed with being heard, they find power in being the one who truly listens. Memory, for them, isn't just mental, it's emotional. They don't just remember what was said, they remember how it made them feel. Every harsh word, every broken promise, every small act of kindness, it all leaves an imprint, because their hearts are like film, capturing light and shadow in the same frame. They never argue, because they know emotions can turn truth into smoke. But that doesn't mean they forget. In fact, their silence is the space where memories echo the loudest. They remember how someone's eyes dimmed when they lied. They remember the tremor in a friend's voice when they said, "I'm fine," but weren't. They remember laughter shared in trust, and the moment it turned into silence. For them, remembering isn't revenge, it's awareness. They carry memories not to dwell on pain, but to learn the language of people's souls. It's how they navigate the world, by recalling patterns, recognizing energy, feeling shifts others dismiss. And that deep emotional record they hold, it makes them compassionate, because when you remember pain vividly, you hesitate to cause it in others. That's why they forgive easily, but never twice for the same wound. They'll give you grace once, understanding that humans falter. But if you repeat the harm, they'll step back quietly, without a word, but with everything remembered. Their memory is not a burden, it's a compass. It helps them discern who deserves access, who speaks truth, and who only performs it. To argue feels useless to them, because they already know. They've already seen what they needed to see, felt what they needed to feel, and in their stillness lies an unspoken message. I heard you, I understood you, and I remember, not to hold against you, but to hold myself together. Because some memories don't fade. They transform into wisdom, into distance, into quiet strength. When people who never argue choose silence, it isn't weakness, it's communication on another frequency. It's the kind of message you can't hear with your ears, but you can feel it in the space they leave behind. Their silence is not emptiness. It's filled with everything they've decided not to say. The truths that would wound, the emotions that would explode, and the wisdom that would be wasted on the unready. They know that sometimes words can do more harm than good. Arguments twist meaning, turn understanding into competition, and make the heart defensive instead of open. So they let silence do what shouting never could. Reveal who truly listens. When they grow quiet, it isn't because they've run out of things to say. It's because they've realized the other person has stopped hearing. So they pull their energy inward, into a calm that protects their peace. Their silence is a form of emotional intelligence. It says, I value my inner world too much to let chaos dictate my tone. It says, I've learned that truth doesn't always need an audience. People often misread this stillness. They think it's surrender, but it's actually strategy. They let time reveal what temper cannot. Because silence has a strange way of showing who panics first. When they don't argue back, it forces others to face their own noise. Their quiet becomes a mirror, reflecting all the insecurity, pride, and guilt that shouting tries to cover. And that's their paradox. They seem passive, but their stillness often ends the war. Not by overpowering the other, but by disarming them. They understand that real strength isn't in proving your point. It's in knowing when your peace matters more than being right. Because the truth, left alone, doesn't disappear. It stands, quietly, unbothered, waiting for the world to catch up to it. So when they walk away without a word, they're not ignoring you. They're trusting silence to say what words never could. I remember, I understand, and I'm at peace. For those who never argue but always remember, memory isn't a weapon, It's a quiet act of love. They may not confront you, they may not raise their voice, but they remember every word, every pause, every unsaid thing. They don't remember to accuse, they remember to understand, to trace the map of who you are, to see the patterns beneath your silence, and the truths that live between your sentences. Their memory is emotional archaeology. They dig through moments carefully, preserving the fragments that others forget. Because to them, remembering is connection, and forgetting feels like betrayal. But here lies their paradox. The same memory that helps them love deeply also becomes the weight they quietly carry. They recall every tone that hurt, every promise that faded, every warmth that turned cold. They replay it not to hold grudges, but because they can't turn off empathy. Their hearts are like libraries, full of stories that never made it to the ending. They walk through the shelves of those memories, not to suffer, but to make sense of what others discard. You see, people who never argue often seek meaning, not victory. They ask, "Why did it happen this way?" instead of, "How could you do this to me?" They understand that arguing changes nothing if someone isn't ready to hear. So they keep the lesson, let go of the noise, and walk forward wiser, not colder. When you meet such souls, don't mistake their calm for indifference. Inside them, storms have already passed. They've cried their tears in silence, written letters they never sent, and forgiven you without your apology. They remember because it keeps them human, because in remembering, they find closure the world never offered. They remember so they don't repeat cycles, so they don't bleed on the innocent, so they don't lose themselves in someone else's chaos again. To them, peace doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from accepting what cannot be changed, and loving what once was, even in its absence. So if they never argue with you, and never return your fire, don't think they've forgotten. They simply chose peace, and peace always remembers.